Balaam, 2 lessons, but also more questions, and I'll give one answer as to why that is. Someone might ask, why so many questions on Balaam? Why so much to say about Balaam? Short answer, because Moses says a lot about Balaam. The New Testament says a lot about Balaam, so I think that's worthy enough of our time. So we come again into the middle of this story. Balaam has already been approached twice by Balak's messengers. The first time he says no, because this is what the Lord says. The second time he's approached with more prominent men, honorable men, princes, and so forth. And he first says, I can't go beyond the word of the Lord. Good words. But then he says, let me go and see what more the Lord will say. So you stay here tonight. And so that's really where we left off on Sunday. The next morning he saddles his donkey, and someone sort of summarize for us what happens on the journey as he goes towards Balak. What takes place there?
The donkey refused to go.
And why does the donkey refuse to go?
Standing in front of him with a sword.
Right. Yeah. That'd be cause enough.
Something was wrong with
Yeah.
that donkey was talking to him.
That's right. Yeah. It's an angry angel at that, we might say. One that is sent by the Lord, the angel of the Lord, it's even described as. And that particular character is seen throughout the Old Testament. We've already seen the angel of the Lord mentioned in the Pentateuch. We'll see him again mentioned throughout some of the Pentateuch on into Joshua's day as they enter the land. And so it's even interesting with the angel, he's described as being his adversary, Balaam's adversary. So he is against Balaam in what he's doing. And so what is Balaam's reaction? Balaam doesn't see the angel, right? So what is his initial reaction to what his beast of burden is doing?
It's the donkey.
Yeah, just starts wailing on it. Eventually, the donkey sits down in the middle of the road as the path is kind of narrowed, because the donkey sees the angel. And then what does the Lord allow to happen from there?
The donkey speaks to Balaam.
Yeah, so that's sort of the most famous part of this story, probably we would say. Let's go ahead and notice what the donkey says. Let's actually notice what the donkey says to Balaam. So it does say, the Lord opened the mouth of the donkey, and she said to Balaam, what have I done to you, that you have struck me these 3 times? And Balaam said to the donkey, because you have made a fool of me. I wish I had a sword in my hand, for then I would kill you. So he just kind of carries on a conversation with his donkey, and we notice that also. But notice what else the donkey says. Am I not your donkey, on which you have ridden all your life long to this day? Is it my habit to treat you this way? And he said, no. So the donkey is essentially saying, I have been your loyal animal for all this time. I've not done anything like this ever in my life. Wouldn't it be logical to say something is wrong here? Something's going on, and instead you've gone to abusing me in this way. And so then from there, what next happens in the story? What does Balaam now recognize? What is he allowed to recognize?
His eyes are open.
And he sees the angel, right? And so now let's see what the angel says to Balaam. And he has his sword drawn, so he's ready. He was ready to kill Balaam if he came that close. Balaam bows down, falls on his face. The angel of the Lord, verse 32, why have you struck your donkey these 3 times? Repeating what has already been stated by the donkey. Behold, I have come out to oppose you, because your way is perverse before me. Does anyone have a different translation of that word perverse? Might not, just curious. Reckless. I'll circle back to that here in just a minute. But notice verse 33. The donkey saw me and turned aside before me these 3 times. If she had not turned aside from me, surely just now I would have killed you and let her live. And we'll come back to Balaam's response here in just a moment. But that word perverse or reckless, it means to run contrary to something or someone, to move headlong into something or to push headlong into something. Rather, the same sort of language that could describe what the donkey had been doing, right, on the path, and Balaam was saying the donkey is in the wrong, and so he just goes to punishing the donkey. But in fact, it was Balaam who was reckless through his actions in going with the sons of Moab. So Balaam then, in verse 34, confesses his sin, but it seems that his only confession is, let's just read the text. He says, I have sinned, for I did not know that you stood in the road against me. Now therefore, if it is evil in your sight, I will turn back. So what seems to be the case is all that Balaam is really confessing is, he's talking to the angel, I didn't know you were in the way, therefore, if I had known that, I would not have beat my donkey these 3 times. That's what he's confessing sin over. He's not picturing the full scope of what's going on. We're going to see he doesn't picture the full scope of what the Lord's will is as we continue with the story. So the main sin is that Balaam went. Okay, that is the main opposition that he's had towards God. God was clear on the matter. He goes anyway. The story progresses, and Balaam finds, and I'll catch up here on the slides per usual. Balaam finally arrives. Balak seems to say, what took you so long, right? Why didn't you come the first time? I had to send more men the second time, and even then maybe there was a delay with this whole donkey incident. But he says, didn't you hear me say that I would honor you? So why haven't you come quicker? Balak then takes him to Bamoth Baal, which is the high places of Baal. Maybe your translation even reads that way. And this is where he then shows Balaam only a fraction of the people. And I think that particular detail will come into play here in just a moment. But anything else here on the incident with the donkey and the angel of the Lord? Anything else there? Yes, sir.
It's been made before, but the irony here is that the donkey could see more than the seer could. And that, whereas God had said, go with them.
Yeah.
But there's more to it than that. Mm-hmm. It's not contradictory. But Balaam went with greed in his heart. He wanted to find a way to circumvent. And so this is how God gets his attention. Yeah. And he sure does. And at this point, Balaam says, okay, I'll go back. He says, no, you go ahead. But you're going to say exactly what I give you.
That's right.
So it's quite a story. There's a little bit of humor, dark humor in it. But it's not funny, really. It's deadly serious.
Yeah. Maybe you've run across material like this where the main point in children's material about Balaam is don't abuse your pets. That's not really the point of this story. Okay. As Wes just mentioned, there's a whole lot more to it than just animal abuse. Not condoning animal abuse, by the way. Okay, make that clear. But that's not the main point of this story. Anything else with this story here? All right, moving into question 6 then. So the next morning, Balak takes Balaam to Bamoth Baal. Balaam instructs that 7 altars be prepared for burnt offerings to supplement whatever he heard from the Lord, as the Lord had told him. You speak whatever I tell you. Just in a sentence or two, what is the Lord's message to Balaam, this first oracle that is spoken by Balaam.
They're righteous. These people
Yeah.
are not cursed, they're righteous.
That's right. Yeah. So Balaam reiterates or I guess not yet reiterates, but kind of flips on its head what Balak's expectation was with Balaam. Whoever you curse, talking to Balaam, will be cursed. Whoever you bless will be blessed. You come and do this for me. But Balaam says, in actuality, there's only one outcome that's going to come from this. These people are blessed. I think, again, that we've mentioned Genesis 12 and verse 3, but that similar phrase is repeated here in verse 6 of 23. Or I think it's, 22 in verse 6. That was already said. But Balaam further exclaims, notice what he says in, let's see here, in verse 10. Who can count the dust of Jacob or number the fourth part of Israel? Let me die the death of the upright, and let my end be like his. So Balaam sort of, having this exclamation of, I want to be like Israel. I want to be like God's people. I want to die the death of the righteous. Good words. But that's unfortunately not the end of the story. It is also interesting, he says, who can count the dust of Jacob or number the fourth part of Israel? It's already been mentioned in the narrative, in the exposition, that Balak, where he took him up to, he was only able to see a fraction of the people. So maybe this is going along with that language. This is just a fraction, a fourth of the people even. Maybe it's talking about the four parts of the encampment as they were moving along. We've talked about those things. But what is Balak's response? After Balaam finishes, what's Balak's response?
Balak is beside himself.
Yeah. Yes.
What have you done to me?
Yeah. Exactly. You can almost picture, he's standing off to the side where all these altars have been prepared, sacrifices have been made, and it's like, all right, finally, we're going to get their comeuppance, we're going to take care of this thing. Balak maybe thinking in his mind, and then what comes out of Balaam's mouth is the exact opposite of what he asked him to come here and do. So maybe there's kind of like a double take, and what's going on? Not going to be the last time he does that. So moving right into question 7 then. In Balaam's second attempt to curse Israel, what reason does he give as to why the Lord chooses to bless Israel? We've already mentioned, yes, the Lord will bless his people, but I think we get some specific reasons here. So what are those here in the text?
He has not observed iniquity in Jacob, nor has he seen wickedness in Israel.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing to notice here. He has not beheld or observed. You said iniquity. I think that seems to be a better translation. There's some that would say misfortune, which maybe it can be taken in a different way. But iniquity or wickedness, I've not seen this in Israel. Therefore, the Lord is with them. The Waldrons make a good point here, that with that detail specifically, Balaam is going to lock that away in the back of his mind. And he's going to say, okay, the Lord is not going to curse his people if they are righteous, if wickedness is not in the camp. Maybe I can find a way for wickedness to be in the camp. And then I can get these riches. And we all walk away happy, except for Israel, of course, and God. But just keep that in mind as we move forward. What else does he say about God or just even about Israel or anything else there? What else is said? What about the character of God is talked about at the very beginning of the oracle?
Doesn't change his mind.
Yeah, he is. God is not a man that he should lie, nor a son of man that he should change his mind. So he, just again reiterating the point, the Lord has said he will not curse. Why? And this goes back to what Balaam in the second visitation by Balak's men. Let me go see if the Lord has changed his mind. He hasn't. Okay, and so this is given in that second oracle. Balaam, it said, also received a command directly from the Lord to bless, so he could not revoke it. He further says, there is no enchantment or divination against Israel. We've already talked about who Balaam is. How is Balaam described later in the book of Joshua, but even if you look at the place he was from, Peor, and what that name means, who was Balaam? He was a prophet of God, but what else was he?
Well, I think the text says he was a soothsayer.
He was a soothsayer, that's right. So in some form or fashion, he has used these mediums, and I think we can even infer from 24 and verse 1, which we'll get to here in just a moment, that in these first two oracles, he had consulted them in some way. 24 and verse 1 says, when Balaam saw that it pleased the Lord to bless Israel, he did not go, as at other times, to look for omens, but set his face toward the wilderness. And that's the same word, by the way, that's used here in the second oracle. But furthermore, this is one last thing. The Lord has brought them out of Egypt. Going back in their history, this is mentioned. He's brought them out of Egypt with great strength, has promised them this land that's ahead of them. And so as there is no iniquity found in them, they are going to experience victory and they're going to conquer the land. And you are not going to hold them back from that. Balak's response this time, if we can sum it up in a couple of words, is kind of just stop talking. Don't give any more curses, don't give any more blessings. Whatever you think about those things, just stop. Okay? But that's not going to be the last thing that he says. Anything more in that second oracle? All right, question 8 then. So Balaam attempts to curse Israel a third time. We've already read 24 and verse 1. Summarize what he says instead of a curse in this instance. What do you have for that?
Israel will defeat his enemies.
Yeah. That's a good summation of what's said here.
Blessing those that bless you, cursing those that curse you.
Yeah, that comes up again and again and again, doesn't it? Blessings and cursings. We've already noted again, verse 1, these omens or enchantments. This time, he just simply sets his face towards the wilderness and waits for the Lord and his message. So maybe that's at least a positive. He waits for the Lord's blessing, that is. And not only does he talk about Israel as blessed, but he even goes into sort of more poetic language, shall we say, where he talks about strong trees being planted by the waters, God's presence, Israel's future triumph, stronger than the kings, even greater than Agag is the name that's mentioned, which you'll remember in Saul's day was the name of a specific king of Amalek. But I think also just in the history of those people, Agag was sort of just a common name of many of those kings. And by the way, Amalek, a grandson of Esau, so they would gain prominence over that lineage even still, as has already been mentioned with Edom. But again, as has also been mentioned, ends with this reaffirmation that those who bless Israel are blessed, those who curse them are cursed. I want to notice what else is said in verse 9 of chapter 24 here. It says, he crouched, he lay down like a lion and like a lioness. Who will rouse him up? Blessed are those who bless you, and cursed are those who curse you. Does anyone happen to have a chain reference for 24 and verse 9? Anything else come up, or maybe that language sounds familiar? No, we'll turn somewhere here in just a moment. Let's go back. If you put a marker here, turn back to Genesis 49. Genesis 49, this is the context of Jacob blessing all of his sons. And we're going to look here at the blessing of Judah, who we've talked about from time to time. Genesis 49 and verse 8, Judah, your brothers shall praise you. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons shall bow down before you. Judah is a lion's cub. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He stooped down. He crouched as a lion and as a lioness. Who dares rouse him? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet. And tribute comes to him. And to him shall be the obedience of the peoples. Balaam, in these last two oracles, is going to begin to point to truths that are so much grander than certainly I think what Balaam recognizes, but what Israel recognizes even. But it goes back to the promise of Abraham in the fourth oracle, even further back than that, I think we can notice. But here, to the blessings of Jacob. This almost exact phrase is used here in Genesis 49 and Numbers 24. So there's going to be this king who arises from Judah who is going to command the obedience of the peoples, and that's plural, which would include, if they chose to be faithful, would include Moab and those from Moab. By the way, we have Ruth from Moab, who would be in the line of the Messiah. So there's just all sorts of things happening here in these oracles that I think if we continue to dig, we just continue to find things. Anyone else have something there with that third oracle?
What is Balaam thinking, you reckon? I mean, I struggle with all this sometimes about Balaam saying all these wonderful things. He's already made a mistake we've seen early on. He's saying all these things, God's putting it, I don't think he's made a robot out of Balaam.
Yeah.
But it's so Balaam, we see where Balaam's going. So, God knows where Balaam's going, knows his heart, and is, what is motivating? I mean,
Yeah.
we know he's greedy and everything.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's that, sort of hardened heart that we've already talked about so often, but I think one of the things you mentioned there is key. The Lord is giving him opportunity to see, to see what he thinks of his people and why he allowed Balaam to go in the first place. Okay, you go, but only speak what I speak. And then he gets to say those very words. And let's not be a Balaam, I think, is certainly one of the lessons. And let's not listen to the Balaams. We'll talk about that here in just a little bit. You had something else?
No, I'm just trying, you say it, like I said, you say these things that are good pronouncements, and I guess it's like you said, just don't be that. Let's don't be someone who talks the talk but doesn't walk the walk or something.
It's hypocritical, isn't it? And it's so much of even, I guess, famously or infamously, one of the ones in the New Testament would be the Pharisees and various Jewish leaders who say so much of the right things, but then their actions don't bear it out, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, that's a good point. Appreciate that. Anything else there? All right, question 9. So Balak is in fury at this point. In verses 10 and 11 of 24, what does he say to Balaam?
The Lord has kept you back from honor.
Yeah, he doesn't say, Balaam, you have kept yourself back from honor. He says, the Lord, Yahweh, God, has held you back from honor. And that word for honor, this is the same word or phrase that we've taken note of throughout, the glory of the Lord. He's kept you back from glory. Saying that the Lord has kept you back, this was the very first lie that was presented to mankind back in the garden. In Genesis 3, there in verses 4 and 5, where Satan essentially says God didn't mean what he said. And in fact, God is holding you back from becoming like him. You will become gods in the day that you eat of the fruit. The only thing that God is holding us back from is our own destruction. Isn't that what he's already done with Balaam? And that's the lesson that he tried to teach him on the road with the donkey. Got the angel of the Lord with sword drawn, ready to kill Balaam. And the Lord has allowed the donkey to save her master's life. And eventually Balaam's not going to learn that lesson. He says, again, some of the right words here, which we've noted. So interesting. But Balaam needed to realize that God's boundaries, his restraints, God's restraints, were there for his good. Eventually he would not recognize that. Regardless of the words that he says, he would do things contrary to that. All right, we could look at some other passages there, but I think that point is pretty well made. Anything else there with Balak's response and then Balaam's even, which I know we talked about in passing, but repeats much of what we've already talked about. All right. Question 10 then. This is Balaam's final attempt to curse Israel. And I think going back, I would amend this question. I would and I wouldn't. The way I phrased it, what Abrahamic promise does he connect to Israel's blessing? I think we can take it further back than Abraham, but I think it's in line with this Abrahamic promise. But if we can just say generically, or even specifically, what promise is talked about here in this final oracle?
He talks about Christ.
Mm-hmm.
He also talks a little bit about, I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but talks about a little bit about, Israel's going to have their nation, this possession, but the ultimate thing's going to be, he's pointing toward Christ.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with most of the prophecies that, or oracles, however you want to say it, that we observe in Scripture kind of have a double fulfillment, sort of this shorter term fulfillment, and then ultimately it's going to have a much grander fulfillment. In this case, it would be Christ. So he first says that, and this is another thing to notice. Before he gives the oracle to Balak, he says, "Let me tell you of what's going to happen to your people in the latter days." So that's a clue for starters. This is not going to take place immediately as I utter these words, but in the latter days. And again, maybe that has multiple meanings. But the one who he would take down Moab and Edom, have dominion over it, would be this king in Israel. And the Waldrons also note David exercises some of this dominion over these people. In 2 Samuel chapter 8, for instance, some of those campaigns are talked about. But as I mentioned, this really goes all the way back to Genesis 3 and verse 15, where the curses are uttered, where it is said of Satan, in the curse of Satan, he, or you rather, will bruise his heel, but he shall bruise your head. And there would always be with this woman, or the seed of woman, there would be this conflict. But ultimately, this seed would have dominion over those offspring. And there's a lot of different passages, that we could go to that talk about the Lord's anointed who would rule the nations with a rod of iron. Psalm 2 is a good place to go to. Looking forward again to David's day in 2 Samuel chapter 7, where it was told he would have a throne that would be established forever. The scepter again would not depart from his throne. But there are passages well after Balaam's day, well after David's day, that still spoke of someone from the line of David or from Judah who would inherit and conquer nations. Amos 9, for instance, Obadiah, and one more connection I'll make here. The Messiah, both in the prophets and Isaiah chapter 9. Let's go to Isaiah 9. I think this would be a good place to go before we move into the next lesson. Isaiah 9 and verse 2. This famous passage, especially this time of year, I'm sure, but true for all time. Isaiah chapter 9 and verse 2, the people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwelt in a land of deep darkness, on them has light shone. So, isn't a star a great light? Maybe there's some connection there. But go down to verse 6. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and of peace there will be no end. On the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and to uphold it with justice and with righteousness from this time forth and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this. So, a star, a light, a great light to all the peoples that would have dominion over all of the peoples. This would take place through Christ. Anything else there on question 10 before we move into the next lesson? All right, we've got about 10 minutes left. So lesson 17, just soldiering on here. So all that has transpired in the narrative so far, Numbers 22 through 24, has been coming to a head. Something is about to go down. Balaam has his own motivations for going to Balak. We've talked about those things. He's been proclaiming the word of the Lord, but he's working things to his own advantage, it would seem, in his own mind. And in the background, he's thinking about things and scheming things. Question number 1. What specific sins did Israel commit with the Moabite and the Midianite women at Peor, and how did this lead them into idolatry? What do you have for that?
Fornication leads to spiritual adultery.
Yeah,
Really?
it's a great connection, isn't it? By the way, has God not already warned his people that this was something they needed to take care of? For instance, we go back to Numbers chapter 5. Maybe we'll mention this again on Sunday. But Numbers chapter 5, in the test of a man who supposes his wife to be guilty of adultery, but he doesn't have any witnesses. There was all those tests to go through. But the comparison is made of if you break faith or if you're unfaithful, if you commit iniquity, treachery against the Lord, here are the curses. But then also, that same word and same terminology is used in relation to husband and wife. So God views his people as being his wife in a spiritual sense. So the people, they do begin to behave like harlots, the text says, with the daughters of Moab at the very beginning of 25. Verse 6, which again we'll talk more about Sunday, Lord willing. One of the Israelite men took a Midianite woman to his family in the sight of all the congregation. But we go back to Numbers 22, verses 4 and 7. And you see that these two nations, Moab and Midian, had been conspiring together against Israel from the very beginning of this story, sending envoys to Balaam to curse Israel and so forth. And so together, the text bears out that these two nations were instrumental in seducing Israel, as Wes mentioned, not only to commit physical harlotry, but that would lead to spiritual harlotry and adultery with the Lord. The text says they, let's see the verse here. Verse 3, so Israel joined himself, maybe yours says yoked, so that very, sort of concrete picture of what we're talking about here. Israel yoked himself to Baal of Peor, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel. The sexual immorality is directly tied to their harlotry with Baal. Does this not remind us of passages like 2 Corinthians 6 and verse 14? Do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. For what partnership can righteousness have with wickedness, or what fellowship does light have with darkness? This is exactly what Israel is guilty of here, and what they've been warned of. If they're going to be holy, if they're going to be God's people, they cannot get caught up in the culture of the land that they're about to enter into. See how we're doing on time. One other passage I'll bring up here, and then I'll open it up for questions and comments. If you go over to Psalm 106, which is sort of this sweeping, poetic telling of much of the history of Israel at that point. Psalm 106 and verse 28, the psalmist tells us there that Israel joined themselves also to Baal Peor and ate sacrifices offered to the dead. So that's a little more detail than we get here in the main narrative. Again, the very things that they were warned of not doing in the book of Leviticus, and other places too, but Leviticus so much. Don't become like the nations around you, committing harlotry, physical harlotry, spiritual harlotry with the Lord, making sacrifices to the dead, and making themselves horribly unclean in all sorts of ways. And this is exactly what is going to bring punishment upon the people. Anything else there with the sin that Israel commits? Question 1. All right, we'll probably end then here on question 2. What was the Lord's response to Israel's unfaithfulness? Why was the plague sent upon the people? I've already read part of that, but what is the Lord's initial reaction, and what happens from there? Yes, sir.
He instructs the judges to take all the ringleaders of the leaders of the people who have joined themselves to Baal and to hang them before the Lord.
Yeah. I love the way that, the ringleaders, I love that. I think that's the way the Waldrons in the text they use. That's how they present it. So take all the leaders, the ringleaders, as it were. And there are some translations, depending on the manuscript that's used, either hang them in the sun or execute them in the sun. The conclusion is the same. Okay. They're gonna die. I think the sense is, so hang them in the sun. The idea of doing this in broad daylight, where everyone is going to be able to see what is taking place here. Everyone's going to be able to see this judgment carried out, and so Moses commands that each man who has yoked themselves to Baal, using the previous language, should be killed. Speaking of doing things in broad daylight, I've already mentioned verse 6, and we get the names of these individuals a little later on in the text. But an Israelite, Zimri, who is a prince of Simeon, he's a very prominent man in his own tribe and in his own clan. He is so bold to take a Midianite woman, Cosby, which, by the way, means lie or deceit. I don't know what her parents thought of her when she was first born. That doesn't say a lot, does it? She was a princess of Midian, so two very prominent individuals in their own nations. And so this man takes her to his family's tent in broad daylight, when the rest of the congregation, Moses, the priest, everyone else, they're still mourning, and they just go on to the tent to commit adultery, to fornication, rather. Just brazen wickedness. And Sunday, we get to talk about one of my favorite characters in the Old Testament, but we'll save that for then. But any further comments just on the Lord's response, his justice that's given at this time. Yes, sir.
The text also refers to this as a plague.
Yes, that's right.
And,
Yeah.
of course, we know that God has instructed the judges of the people to kill. As it turns out, it's what, 24,000?
Yeah, that's right.
But it's also referred to here as a plague.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That connection,
Yeah.
I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, and it may be that there's multiple things going on here. I don't know if it would be sort of the main, as was mentioned, the main ringleaders of this insurrection. You kill those, and then there's just sort of a progression where the plague is also mentioned. I don't know if anyone has further thoughts on that, but that makes sense in my mind at least. Maybe that's what's going on here.
I thought of it as being, like you, being in addition to the executions, there was also a plague, so there was a judgment of God coming from different directions.
And maybe that also just makes sense where we've got these sort of multiple judgments taking place because Israel has rebelled all these other times, and the Lord is then, they're ramping up their wickedness and their rebellion. God is ramping up his justice and his punishment to get the point across. Maybe there's some of that as well. All right, we'll pause there, so be ready for question 3 in this lesson, and look forward to it. Thank you.